Hey, my name is Reese Calder. I'm 35 years old, and I drive a tow truck in Garner Creek, Nebraska, a town of 900 people surrounded by 40 miles of wheat and weather in every direction. Calder Towing and Recovery, one truck, one man, on call around the clock, because out here there's no second truck to call. If your car dies on Highway 14 at 2 in the morning in January, I'm what stands between you and the kind of cold that doesn't negotiate. I inherited the business from my father, Del Calder, along with his truck, his coveralls, and his entire philosophy of life, which fit on the hand-painted sign that still hangs over my garage bay. Nobody pays full price ONT worst DAUF theer week. Dad ran that truck for 31 years. He pulled this whole county out of ditches, blizzards, floods, and bad decisions, and he had a rule I watched him keep my entire childhood. You fix the person first, then the car. He'd wrap somebody's shaking kid in the wool blanket he kept behind the seat, hand the mother coffee from his thermos, and only then pop the hood. Half his invoices were never sent. When he died 4 years ago, the funeral procession had more vehicles in it than the town has streets, and a third of them were cars he'd rescued. So that's the inheritance. The truck, the blanket, the thermos, the sign. I've kept all of it running. Here's the part of the inheritance nobody warns you about. When you're the man everyone calls on the worst day of their week, you become a strange kind of ghost. Everybody in 3 counties knows me, waves at me, owes me, blesses me at the diner. And at 35 years old, I've stood in more dark kitchens at 3 a.m. handing coffee to more crying strangers than any man alive. And I've never once been anyone's first call for a good day. I'm the worst day man. It's an honor, mostly. It's also the loneliest job description in Nebraska. I almost wasn't alone. Her name was Dana, and we were engaged for a year and a half, and she was not wrong about anything she said at the end. The radio, she said. The radio always wins. Date night, the radio. Her sister's wedding reception, the radio. A cattle truck on its side out by Bella Ridge, and yes, I went. There were animals down. What are you anyway? She stood in my kitchen holding her ring and said the sentence that has lived rent-free in my chest for 6 years. You love strangers more than you love me. Reese. No, worse. You love strangers instead of loving me. It's easier. They drive away after. She wasn't wrong is the terrible thing. It is easier. A stranger in a ditch is a problem with an ending. You pull them out, they thank you, they drive off, and you never have to find out if they'd stay. After Dana left, I stopped auditioning for anything else. I worked. I kept the sign painted. I became, fully and finally, my father's son, the worst day man, and I told myself the same lie he probably told himself, that being needed and being loved are close enough cousins that a man can live on either one. Then came the last Thursday of March, and the storm, and the red-haired woman on Highway 14. It was the first real thunderstorm of spring, the kind that comes off the plains like it's owed money, sideways rain, lightning walking the horizon on stilts. I was deadheading home at 11 p.m. from a jackknifed horse trailer 2 counties over, soaked through and done when my headlights picked up hazard flashers on the westbound shoulder, 6 miles out of town. A sedan with Colorado plates, packed to the roof, the particular overstuffed geometry I know on sight because I've towed 100 of them. That's not a road trip. That's a life in a car. That's somebody leaving somewhere. The left rear was shredded, not flat, shredded. She'd driven on it a while, the way you do when stopping feels more dangerous than ruining a wheel. And in the driver's seat, in the strobe of her own hazards, sat a woman gripping the wheel of a car that wasn't going anywhere, with the posture of someone who has been making herself small for so long, she does it even alone in a storm. I pulled ahead, lit my beacons, put on the yellow slicker, and walked back, and I did what Dad taught me. You approach a stranded woman at night like you'd approach a hurt animal, wide, visible hands where she can see them, and you say your town name early. She cracked the window 2 inches. Mid-30s. Red hair gone dark with rain at the edges where the window had been open. The kind of red that's almost a fire hazard even soaked. Gray-blue eyes, ringed with exhaustion and something more vigilant than exhaustion. Taking my measure fast, the slicker, the truck, the distance between me and her door handle. I already called my insurance, she said, before hello. They said it could be 2 hours. I'm fine waiting. I don't have a beat, recalibrating. I can't really pay for a tow tonight. Good news then. This isn't a tow, it's a tire, and you've got a full-size spare under all that. I nodded at the packed rear window life. Calder Towing, that's me, Garner Creek 6 miles up. Pop the trunk and stay dry. This is a 15-minute job for a man who's already wet. I can change my own tire. Chin up. Reflex. I don't doubt it for a second. I said and meant it. You could see it in her hands, capable hands. But the lug nuts on these are torqued by a machine with a grudge, and my impact wrench doesn't care about grudges. You'd win eventually. I'll just win faster. A long pause, rain hammering the slicker. Then the trunk clicked. So I changed her tire in the worst rain of the spring, lying half under a stranger's overloaded sedan, while lightning paced around us, and she did not stay dry like I told her. She came out and held the flashlight, in a canvas jacket way too thin for the night, because some people physically cannot sit warm while someone works in the cold on their behalf, and I learned later that this is the most Maeve thing there is, and I clocked it even then. Steady light, never wavering even at the thunder. We didn't talk over the storm. The job took 18 minutes. The shredded tire told me she'd run on it, scared for at least a mile, and when the spare was on and torqued, I stowed the wreck, dropped the jack, and we stood in the rain between her hazards and my beacons. She had her wallet out. The set of her shoulders said this part mattered, said the math was already running, said the wallet had been doing heavy lifting lately. What do I owe you? Acts of God are on the house, I said. Company policy. The lightning did the marketing, it can eat the labor. That's not a real policy. It's been a real policy for 35 years. My dad wrote it. I just keep it painted. I pointed up the road. Garner Creek 6 miles. The spare's good, but it's a spare, so keep it under 50. Where you headed tonight? Garner Creek, actually. She seemed surprised to say it out loud. My aunt's old place. The Kerrigan farmhouse out on Route 6? She passed 2 years ago. It's been empty. She stopped, and the vigilance flickered, and underneath it was a tiredness with a whole geography to it. It's where I'm going. The Kerrigan place. Empty 2 years, which out here means mice, dead furnace, and a yard gone feral. 11:40 at night, in this storm, at the end of whatever long road Colorado had been. Then I'm 6 miles of your escort, I said. No charge, it's my route home, and that driveway floods at the culvert. You'll want my headlights ahead of you. And before the wallet could come back up, I added the thing Dad always added, the thing that closes the argument because it's true. Ma'am, it's not charity. It's that I'm the one who'd get the call at 2 a.m. when the culvert got you. I'm just lazy early. And that's when it happened. The reason you're hearing this story at all. She laughed, one small broken off note, and looked down at the wallet in her hands, and the rain ran off both of us, and when she looked up, the vigilance had cracked clean through, and what was under it was so tired and so bewildered that it didn't even have the strength to be private anymore. She said it quietly, half to me and half to the storm, the question that I have since learned 10,000 women are carrying around this country like a stone in a coat pocket. Why are strangers kinder than my husband was? The hazards ticked. The lightning walked the wheat somewhere far off. I don't know, I said, because Dad also taught me never to answer a real question with a brochure. But I know it's the wrong comparison. Strangers aren't the high bar, ma'am. We're the floor. Kindness is supposed to be the floor. Maeve Kerrigan, though I didn't have her name yet, stood in the rain on Highway 14 and looked at me like I'd said something in a language she used to speak. Then she nodded once the way you nod at a fact you intend to think about for several years and got in her car, and I walked back to my truck, and I led her 6 miles through the storm to a dark farmhouse with my beacons going, the worst day man doing the only thing he knows. I checked the culvert. It held. Her headlights turned in. I idled at the end of the drive until a light came on inside the house. One window, gold against all that black wet prairie. Then I drove home, and I want to be honest with you about the state of me 6 years after Dana, 4 years after Dad, 18 minutes after a shredded tire. I sat in my own driveway with the engine ticking and the rain quitting, and I could not stop seeing it. Not her face, not yet. That came later, the flashlight. Steady, never wavering, held by a woman with nothing left. For a stranger she had every reason on earth not to trust. Some people hold the light for you even on the worst day of their week. I didn't have a word yet for what that did to me. I just knew the radio felt different in the cab. Like it might, for once, ring with a good day on the other end. The Kerrigan place needed everything, and Garner Creek being Garner Creek, everybody knew by Saturday that Rose Kerrigan's niece had moved in alone, with Colorado plates and a wedding ring she wasn't wearing, and the casserole reconnaissance began by Sunday. I held out until Tuesday, then drove out with the excuse I'd been manufacturing since Thursday, a half quart of seasoned firewood, left over from a job, which fooled no one, least of all her. She came out on the porch in work gloves, hair tied back in a red knot with paint flecks in it already, and watched me stack wood I would not let her pay for, and said dry as August. Does the lightning eat the labor on firewood too? Different policy. This one's called the culvert retainer. I keep you in firewood. You never make me winch a sedan out of your driveway at 2 a.m. You're gonna have a policy for everything, aren't you? My father had 31 years of them. I'm just the librarian. And Maeve Kerrigan laughed, a real one this time, with her whole face involved, and I drove home knowing exactly what I was doing and pretending otherwise, which is the official posture of every man in every story like this one. I learned her in pieces over April, the way the town did, except I got the real pieces. She was 34. This came out almost by accident, a veterinarian, an actual licensed DVM, large animal trained at Colorado State, which in a county that lost its last vet to retirement 3 years ago was roughly equivalent to discovering the new neighbor was a rain cloud in a drought. But when Hal at the feed store asked, hopeful as a kid at a window, whether she'd be hanging a shingle, she went polite and shuddered. Oh, I haven't practiced in years. I'm not, no, and changed the subject to fence posts. The why of that took longer and came out on her porch steps over the course of several evenings that started as me dropping things off, a belt for her well pump, a window screen, the firewood policy, and turned into coffee, and turned into the kind of talking two careful people do, aimed out at the wheat instead of at each other. His name was Preston. Dr. Preston Sutton, half of Sutton and Sutton Veterinary, in a nice suburb of Denver, and here's the thing she kept insisting on, early, like a witness correcting the record. He never hit her. He never even yelled. Preston was charming. Preston was beloved. Preston remembered everyone's dog's name and sponsored the Little League and got voted best of the West Suburbs 4 years running. And Preston, at home, with the door closed, spent 11 years dismantling his wife one joke at a time. Her diagnoses questioned in front of staff, then laughed off. She's the passionate one, I'm the scientist. Her clients quietly migrated to his column. Her ideas repeated back to her a week later as his. Her tears at a hard euthanasia. This is what I mean, Maeve. You're too emotional for this work. It's not a criticism. It's a kindness, until she believed him and moved to managing the front office, a DVM running billing, and her license renewals became a waste of money. But sure, if it makes you feel like a real doctor. She did the renewals in secret, every year, 11 years. She told me that on the porch in May, looking at the wheat, and then she looked at her own hands like they belonged to a stranger and said the thing that I think about still. He never hit me. So I kept telling myself I had no right to leave. That's the trick of it, Reese. He takes everything but the bruises, and the bruises are the only part anyone's taught you to count. The tire on Highway 14, it turned out, had blown on day 2 of the drive that started the morning she finally counted everything else. I told her mine too, fair trade. Dana, the ring on the kitchen counter, the radio that always wins. You love strangers instead of loving me. They drive away after. Maeve listened with that steady flashlight attention, and then she said she wasn't wrong about the radio, but she was wrong about the why. She turned her coffee cup. You're not hiding from loving that truck, Reese. You're doing the most loving thing you ever saw a man do, the only way you know how to do it. Your father just forgot to teach you the part where you let somebody hold the light for you. She stood, collected the cups, embarrassed at herself the way she got whenever she said something true out loud. Anyway, I know the species. I'm the woman who renewed a license for 11 years for a life I wasn't allowed to live. The cow was the second Tuesday of May, 2:40 a.m. The radio, of course. Lyle Hendricks half panicked, his best heifer down with a calf coming wrong, the on-call vet out of Ainsley 90 minutes away in good weather, and it was raining sideways again, Springs encore. And I was on my feet pulling boots on before I understood why my truck was already pointed in my head toward Route 6, and I called her 2:43 a.m., and Maeve answered on the second ring, wide awake the way the formerly vigilant always are, and I said 5 words. There's a calf coming wrong. Silence. 1 breath's worth. 11 years on one side of it, the rest of her life on the other. Pick me up, she said. And Reese, tell Lyle to get hot water going and find his calving chains. Clean ones. What happened in Lyle Hendricks's barn between 3 and 4:40 that morning is now told at the diner the way other towns tell football stories. The calf was breech and big. Maeve Kerrigan walked into that barn in my spare coveralls with her red hair soaked flat, knelt in the straw, went quiet for 30 seconds with her arm in and her eyes somewhere else entirely, reading the dark by hand, and then came back to us like a diver surfacing and started giving orders in a voice I had never heard from her. Low, fast, certain, a voice without 1 ounce of apology in it. And here's the part that mattered, the part I'd carry out of that barn for good. You cannot pull a calf alone. It's a two-person truth. She set the chains, and she put me on the rope behind her, and for 40 minutes we pulled together in rhythm with the heifer's pushes, her calling the timing now, rest. Now. My hands over hers on the rope. Both of us braced in the straw, and at 4:38 a.m. a heifer calf came into the world steaming in the lantern light, and sneezed, and Lyle Hendricks, 60 years old, third generation, wept like a hydrant, and Maeve Kerrigan sat back in the wreckage of the straw with blood to her elbows, and her hair stuck to her face, and looked at her own 2 hands like they'd come home from a long war. There she is, she whispered. I thought she meant the calf. She did not mean the calf. Word travels at the speed of feed stores. By June, she had a phone that rang like mine. By July, she'd seen more cattle than the Ainsley vet, all of it informally as a neighbor. Because the shingle, the official shingle, still scared her in a way she couldn't say out loud and didn't have to. Because I knew whose voice was on the other side of that fear, telling her she was too emotional to be a real doctor. Somewhere in July, she started riding along. Not every call, just the bad weather ones. 2 sets of hands, she'd say, climbing in with her own thermos now, and I'd pretend it was practical, and so would she. One night out by Bellow Ridge, we pulled a family's minivan off a washed shoulder, 2 kids in the back seat scared white, and before I'd even set the hook, Maeve was in the gravel at their window, and by the time I had the van on the bed, she had both kids wrapped in my father's wool blanket, telling them, with total clinical authority, that tow trucks or the ambulances of cars and theirs was going to make a full recovery. The little one saluted her. Driving home, she held the empty thermos in her lap and said, quietly, I see why the radio always won, Reese. It's not even close to a fair fight. It was the first time anyone had ever taken the radio's side. I had to look hard at the road for a while. And in August, the voice came in person. A silver Audi with Colorado plates parked in front of the diner on a Saturday morning, market day, the whole town in attendance, and out stepped a man I recognized from one photograph in 11 years of porch stories. Handsome, the way a brochure is handsome. He didn't go to her farmhouse, of course he didn't. Men like Preston Sutton don't do private. He walked into the Garner Creek Diner at peak Saturday, asked Donna at the counter, at a volume calibrated to carry, whether she knew his wife, Maeve Sutton. I've been worried sick. She left very suddenly. She hasn't been entirely herself. Concern pitched perfectly. The beloved doctor, the worried husband, the first coat of varnish going onto a story where she was fragile, and he was patient. And half the diner didn't know her yet, and I watched it start to set, the way concrete does, and I was already out of my booth when the bell over the door rang. Maeve, Saturday eggs, like every Saturday now, she stopped 2 steps in. The diner went silent the way only a small-town diner can totally, instantly, forks down. And Preston Sutton turned around with his best face on, the best of the west suburbs face, and opened his arms a careful, gentle half-inch, and said, There she is. I want to tell you what I did, because it's important, and what's important is how little it was. I didn't cross the diner. I didn't square up. The worst day man knows the difference between a rescue and a robbery, and stepping into that moment would have robbed her of the one thing 11 years had owed her. I stood by my booth where she could see me, the way I'd approached her car on Highway 14, wide, visible hands where she could see them, and I held still, present as a tow truck on a shoulder, hers to call or not call. She saw me. One flick of the gray-blue eyes, half a second. Then she turned to her husband, and the diner held its coffee. There she is, Maeve repeated, quietly, and something in the words seemed to strike her funny, in a way that had nothing to do with laughing. You know, that's the second time somebody said that about me this year. The first time I was sitting in a barn at 4:40 in the morning with my arms covered in blood, because I'd just pulled a breech calf that lived. I said it to my own hands, Preston. There she is. Because I hadn't seen her in 11 years, and you're the reason. Maeve. The voice. The gentle, reasonable, audience-aware voice. You're upset. We don't have to do this here in front of. Here is exactly where we're doing it. She didn't raise her voice. She set it down, level, the calving barn voice, the one with no apology in it. You came 300 miles and you didn't come to my house. You came to the diner on a Saturday because you don't want me back, Preston. You want the record corrected. You want these people to hear she hasn't been herself before they get to know that this is myself, so let's correct the record. She stepped past him, to the middle of the diner, to the town. My name is Maeve Kerrigan. It was never Sutton. I checked the paperwork twice. I'm a doctor of veterinary medicine, licensed 11 years straight, which my husband called a waste of money while telling me I was too emotional to practice. He never hit me. I want to say that, because he'd want me to say that it's his best fact. He just spent 11 years explaining me to myself, one little joke at a time, until the only thing I knew for sure about Maeve was that she was lucky to be tolerated. Her voice caught once, and she let it, in front of everyone, and kept going, which is the bravest thing I ever watched a person do. And then my tire shredded on Highway 14 in a thunderstorm 6 miles from this town, and a stranger in a yellow slicker changed it in the rain and wouldn't take my money, and I stood there and asked him why strangers were kinder than my husband. And you know what he told me? He said strangers aren't the high bar. Kindness is supposed to be the floor. She turned back to Preston, and she was done. You could hear done in it. I've spent 5 months in a town that lives on the floor you never met, Preston. I pull cabs at 3 a.m. I have my aunt's house and my own name and a phone that rings, because people need me, not because they need me managed. The divorce is final. Your lawyer has my lawyer, and the only thing in Colorado I miss is the mountains. Go home. Tell them whatever you want. Out here we go by the evidence. Preston Sutton looked around the diner for the room he always counted on, and the room looked back at him the way Garner Creek looks at weather it's decided to outlast. Donna refilled my coffee without taking her eyes off him, which in this town is a verdict. He left the way varnished men leave, smiling, unhurried, saying something gracious that no one would remember, and the silver Audi was Colorado's problem by noon. The diner did not applaud. This is Nebraska. What happened instead was better. Lyle Hendricks stood up from the counter, walked over to Maeve, and said loud enough for the record, "Doc, my heifer's due again in February. I'd as soon book you now," and the whole room murmured agreement like a congregation. And Maeve Kerrigan stood in the middle of the Garner Creek diner and got, at last, the second opinion she'd needed for 11 years. She hung the shingle in September. C-A-R-R-I-G-A-N, Lurg Animal Veterinary, and the town painted half her clinic in a weekend. And the clinic, I should mention, is the east bay of my garage, rent paid in a currency we negotiated at length, which is to say coffee in her presence, because the truth is I'd have paid her. And the night everything finished beginning was the 3rd Friday of October, and I want you to appreciate what the universe did because it has a sense of symmetry that borders on showing off. First cold rain of fall. My tow truck, my father's tow truck, 35 years old and entitled to its opinions, dropped its serpentine belt on Highway 14, eastbound shoulder, 11 at night, 6 miles out of town within a quarter mile. I checked the marker of where a shredded tire had been waiting for me in March. The worst day man, broken down on his own highway in the rain, with no second truck to call. Except for the first time in 6 years, in 35 years maybe, there was a number in my phone that wasn't a customer or a dispatcher. I sat in the cab listening to the rain, and I had it the whole time, the out. I could have walked. I could have called Hal. I could have done what I have always done, which is be no trouble to anyone and rescue myself. And I heard Dana's voice, "They drive away after," and I heard Maeve's, "Your father forgot to teach you the part where you let somebody hold the light," and I dialed, and she answered on the second ring, wide awake, and I said, and it cost me more than any tow bill in history, "Maeve, I'm broke down on 14, 35 years in one breath, I need somebody." "Pick you up," she said, like it was nothing, like it was everything. "I know the spot." She came out in 20 minutes in her aunt's old farm truck with a thermos and my own father's brand of Headlights First Competence, and she stood in the rain holding the flashlight steady, never wavering, while I threw the belt back on, and when I dropped the hood we were standing between her headlights and my dead beacons, the exact inverse of March, and the rain came down on both of us and neither of us moved to get out of it. "What do I owe you?" I said. Acts of God are on the house. Her hair was soaked dark red, plastered to her face, and her eyes were lit up like the storm was funny, like the symmetry was funny, like she'd been waiting since March to stand on this shoulder. But, I should tell you, I've been thinking about it all wrong since the spring. The question I asked you that night, why strangers are kinder, she stepped in, took a fistful of my soaked jacket, the rain running off both of us. It was never about strangers, Reese. It was about you. You're not kind because we're strangers. You'd be kind to anything in a ditch. The whole county's been telling me since March, and I'm a doctor. I go by the evidence. She pulled, just slightly, the way you'd start a calf, gentle, certain now, and you're not a stranger. You haven't been a stranger since the lug nuts. I kissed her on the shoulder of Highway 14 in the first cold rain of fall, 6 years of careful and 35 years of worse days coming off me like road grime in a downpour, her hand fisted in my jacket, the wheat invisible and enormous all around us, and somewhere over the scanner in her aunt's truck, faint. The night went on dispatching its troubles to other counties, and for once, the radio could wait. We were married the following May outside at the Kerrigan place, under a sky that could not commit, and when the rain finally came through the ceremony like a guest who'd been invited all along, nobody ran. The whole town stood in it grinning, because they all knew the story, the tire, the diner, the belt, and Maeve Kerrigan, in a short white dress with rain in her red hair, raised her face to it and laughed, and Donna from the diner shouted, "ACTSOF GODARON the houses," and that is now, by unanimous town consent, what we have instead of a wedding hymn. Maeve's practice covers 4 counties now. She has a vet tech, a waiting list, and a reputation among large animal men, the hardest audience on earth, that runs roughly, Doc Kerrigan, she'll cry over your heifer and save her too, and you'll cry first. Too emotional for the work. 11 years he made her believe that, and it turned out the emotion was the talent. It was always the talent. The whole county will testify. And me, I'm still the worst day man. The truck still rolls at 2 a.m., the blanket's still behind the seat, the sign over the bay still says what Del Calder painted. Nobody pays full price on the worst DA we OF the week. But there's a second sign now, smaller, over the East Bay door, under the one with her name on it, and she painted it herself one Sunday without telling me, and I came home from a winch out and stood in the yard and read it and had to sit down on the running board for a minute. Kindness ISEC floor. D. Calder and Son. People still ask about that night on Highway 14. It's town legend now. Donna tells it to every new family that moves in, and in her version the lightning is biblical, and I am taller. They ask Maeve, when she tells it at the clinic, what the answer was. The question she asked a stranger in the rain. Why are strangers kinder than my husband was? And Maeve gives them the answer she worked out herself, the one she earned, the one I'd put on a sign if signs came big enough. They're not. Kindness was never about strangers or husbands. It's about who somebody decides to be when it's raining and nobody's keeping score. I just spent 11 years scored by a man keeping score in a dry house. Then my tire blew outside a town full of people who'd stopped counting. I fixed her flat tire in the rain, and she asked me a question I couldn't answer. Took her 5 months to answer it herself, and one more October storm to deliver it. These days I'm still everyone's worst day in 4 counties. But I'm her every day. And both numbers ring the same phone.